Hello, everyone. Welcome to Around Town TV. My name is Carla Beaurline, and I am thrilled. I'm going to actually bring him onto the screen here a little bit sooner. I am thrilled tonight to have with me a human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence activist and a friend of mine, Luis Moreno. Luis Moreno is also the co-founder of the Twin Cities Business Peer Group Network. He's over the past year, he's held over 50 discussions in English and Spanish in the US and across the world, where he has shared perspectives on the work of training leaders worldwide to be more human. He has a passion for personal and professional development and reads, studies, speaks, and writes on topics related to human-centered leadership, emotional intelligence, diversity, inclusion, talent, immigration, and related topics. Welcome, Luis. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. A pleasure to see you and to have this conversation with you, Carla.
Well, and Luis, one thing that was really struck the chord with me is I was thinking through a list of things that I wanted to ask you. And as I was doing that, I kept thinking to myself, the first time I heard the word emotional intelligence emotional intelligence was back in probably 99, 2000, 2001. And I heard it in the workforce, but it was just a group of colleagues where we talked about it, but nobody applied it to the workforce. And nobody until you has truly talked about human-centered leadership. So I thank you, because it's so needed, as are all of the topics. They're so relevant and so important, especially given what's going on in our world right now. So I'm just excited to dig in and discuss some of this tonight.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Well, and for those who don't know, what is human-centered leadership?
Absolutely. So, leadership, human-centered leadership is that leadership that is based on basically the, human emotions that we have and human elements such as empathy, compassion, understanding, support. So it's basically more about connectivity, how we connect. There are different names for these. Some people also call it leadership that is good for the heart, and there are other names, but there's also the H to H, which is human to human connection, but it's just connecting, person to person. And so there are two things that have been happening. Is one is that, when in the world of business, generally speaking, people get a lot of training to help strengthen and grow the business, right? So we're continuously learning about finance, Excel, PowerPoint, all these kinds of training to make the business better and stronger, right? And so what has happened then is that businesses have gotten better. And if you look at, there's a double-digit growth financially.
Mm-hmm.
But the training is not necessarily always about us, the person. How are we feeling? How are we doing with these things, and how are we handling this growth? Because this growth is coming actually with also a lot of stress. So there are a lot of reports that have, a lot of studies that have reported that the amount of stress that people are experiencing has actually been increasing significantly, over the past decade. And in fact, one of the things that is fascinating is that the major source of stress for many employees, for about a third of the employees, is their bosses, their leaders, who are basically, the people that are hired to protect them, to inspire them, to provide with workplace safety so that they feel, comfortable and protected, are actually the ones that are creating this, sense of stress and anxiety and panic in many times. And the other thing that is happening at the same time is that since we are little, the things that we're being told is, hey, don't show your emotions, kind of control your, careful when to show your passion. And, a lot of coaches will tell you, hey, at work, kind of remain, stay there to the center, don't show too much emotion, don't show too much passion. But actually, what is fascinating about that is that it is, some studies will suggest that we're going to do our best when we are happy. And we are happy when we connect with who we are internally, with the things that we like, the things that we have passion about, right? So like I joke, if somebody say in your company, they'll say, hey, we got to see your social media. We saw your your Facebook, and you're thinking, well, in my Facebook I share my passion, so
Right.
they should be, it should be great because now they know about my passions. But it's more about, we saw your Facebook. So it's like, now that we
Isn't
know
that
about your
true?
passions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and I have to compliment you, Luis, because you and I worked on a very intense project when the world was changing virtually and we were trying to make something happen on both of our ends. And you are not only passionate, you do have that emotional intelligence, but you care about people. And
Thank
so when
you.
I started following you, I'm like, oh, I mean, my respect level for you went up even more. But I am
Thank you.
like that.
Same.
And,
Likewise.
well, and that heart, to have a big, people say, oh, Carla, you have a big heart. And like you, I have always been mentored and coached, but keep it stoic at work. And that's not necessarily who I am, but I also do care about the people I work with. And I
Yeah.
know they always say sometimes they'll even mentor you to not do that. So that's where I want to ask you um, two things. Number one, can you teach empathy and compassion and exactly what you're talking about? Do you feel you can really teach that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like number one question that I get, whether people can learn and develop their level of empathy. And there are actually, there are two schools of thoughts. I mean, there are people
Mhm.
who say that you really cannot increase your
Right.
level of empathy, that you're born with whatever empathy you're going to have. And there are other people who say that you can, in fact, increase your level of empathy. And actually, both of those schools are correct. And what I mean by that is that there are actually some, from a biological standpoint and psychological standpoint, you can have, in fact, a condition, that would make it difficult to you to experience
Mhm.
empathy. For example, right? So, like, if you have a problem of narcissism, which needs to be treated, it's a pathology that needs to be treated, and with a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It doesn't matter how much I can be with you for hours and hours, giving you training on empathy, and you really are not going to experience a significant increase in your level of empathy because you are actually physically, biologically, you have an impediment that
Incapable.
is not, you're incapable to really experience the feeling of others. Now, if we put that aside, for
Yes.
most people that don't have a problem, then you actually can increase your level of empathy. And there are, so I myself, for example, I conduct training to increase, to understand
Mhm.
emotional intelligence, and empathy is one of the five components of emotional intelligence. And there are very specific exercises and best practices that you can do. And the good thing is that once you start doing those and you see, so two things are happening. One is you're actually increasing your level of empathy, but when you see the results of having a higher level of empathy, you get motivated because we have students or professionals and leaders that come back and say, hey, I started to practice the tips, and just I got better results. So then you kind of get addicted to it and you get excited, you get motivated,
Yeah.
and you want to do more.
Well, and recently I was working with a team of people that I was able to empower with empathy and compassion, and they reciprocated, and it was a beautiful thing. There is somebody that I've worked, well, this has happened over the years, and you're right, it's always someone above you with leadership. And I always thought, well, maybe they just don't care. But now that you're saying a few definitions of words, I'm like, oh, it's where the dots connect, because you're like, why wouldn't somebody care? Like, how can you not care? I used to get so frustrated. And now that, some of the light bulbs are going on as you're speaking. And
Yeah.
it's common sense, but it's not when it's right in front of your face.
Right, right. And sometimes it's actually one of the things we do in the training is language, in that sometimes it's more about understanding, better understanding certain words, and sometimes it's basic word. For example, one of the things I've talked about in my training is the word share. Sometimes people think of sharing as giving, but actually sharing is not the same as giving, right? Because giving is when I give you something. If I have a pen, I have it with me and I give it to you, we're basically passing the
Right.
ownership of a pen from me to you. So when you have it, I no longer have it, right? That's to give. But to
Right.
share is actually not to give. To share is that we co-have something. So in this case, if I had a cake, or something that, that we could enjoy, when we share it, actually what we're doing is we're both having it simultaneously at the same time. So the reason why that is important, right? When we say share with others is, let's say that right now you're going through a tough situation. And I know you are actually,
Hmm.
we're friends and
Right.
you share with me,
Right.
you're really going, and I'm sorry about that. And I hope,
Thank you.
things, go better, but I know it's a tough situation. But anyway, you're
Yes.
going through a tough situation and you are, let's think of, so visually, the pain, that
Mhm.
you're going through is
Right.
like a weight that is coming, from
Right.
above. A
And
weight
my
is,
viewers, by the way, know what I'm going through because I'm very out there. They followed my mom for years. They know my mom's nearing end of life. So yes,
right.
the way,
So
yeah.
absolutely. So right now, because of the situation that your mom is going through, you are feeling like, let's suppose that there is a weight that is coming down and you are receiving it, on your shoulder. So you're getting all that weight. When, one of the things about empathy is learning to share. But what that means is that if I'm going to share, your pain in this case, right, the weight of that pain will no longer stand only on you, but I'm going to share it with you. So we are both going to receive it. So that if I receive some of that weight, then it should be less weight for you, because we are now like columns. We're now two columns receiving the weight.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why this is important is because when people think of empathy, they're thinking, sometimes I'll tell people, hey, we have a training on empathy. I'll invite you to join, and say, oh, sorry, thank you, but no, thank you. Why? No, no, I don't want to increase my level of empathy. And I said, why would you not want to increase your level of empathy? I said,
Yeah.
because what happens is that I already have so much pain and suffering with my own pain and my own problems that I don't want to also have to feel the pain of other people. And I explained to them, yeah, although you are right that when you increase your level of empathy, you're going to develop the ability to feel other people's feelings like their pain.
Hmm.
Empathy is not about feeling only the negative feelings like pain, like loss, like grief, like sadness, but it's also positive feelings like joy, like happiness, like celebration. So in this concept, right, the sharing means that when something good is happening to you, like sometimes you'll come to me and say, hey, Luis, I have great news for you. We're going to France. We're going to go visit, Paris and stuff. And I may respond to language that we call non-empathetic languages when I say, okay, Carla, good for you. Which what I'm saying is that great thing that is happening, that great news, that celebration that someone is going to Europe, to France, you are going to France, is good for you, not for me or for anyone else. It's good for you. But then when I say good for you, I'm actually not sharing what it's
Hmm.
happening to you. Sharing will be that I say, okay, just like that, the weight of that pain was coming on your shoulder. In this case, there is this joy, there is this
Yeah.
spirit, there is this celebration. Something really good is happening and it is coming in the air. And it could be the feel of happiness, of joy, of love. And now
Mhm.
I'm going to share it with you, which means we're going to cohabit. So even though that great news is not happening to me, I'm not going to France, but I can share it with you. I can have it with you. I can feel happy because you are going to Paris. So then we both are happy. And it is empathy a lot. When we develop our empathy, we're basically just like a muscle. We're building the
Mhm.
ability to celebrate somebody else's victory, to celebrate
Confidence.
somebody else's celebration, to feel happy because something good is happening to somebody else, even when that good thing that is happening to somebody else is something that you actually would desire for yourself. Let's suppose that we're both without a job, right? And we're both
Yes.
looking for a job, and then you find a job, you get a job offer, and you tell me, say, Luis, I just got an offer from company, X, Y, and Z. And I said, oh, X, Y, and Z. Well, careful with that company because I've heard that they've been having, rounds of layoffs. So enjoy the job while you have it because it may be very short. And that I'm reacting that way first because if I don't have the ability to actually celebrate somebody else's victory, and if it's something that I desire for myself, I can feel jealousy. Right now, I am kind of in a way bothered because something that I wanted for me is happening to you. But
Mhm.
there are two reasons why I should actually, by developing my level of empathy, I should get excited about what is happening to you. One is because your celebration has nothing to do. I have to learn to compartmentalize. Doesn't matter where I am in life and what is happening to me.
Right.
Something good is happening to you, and that is a celebration per se. It doesn't have to be happening to me as well, right? So that's number one. You deserve to be celebrated because something good has happened to you. But actually, for people that are center on themselves, interestingly enough, if I get excited about the good things that happen to other people, it actually increases my chances that the such thing happens to me too. How so? Yes, because it's an energy thing, right? If you just got the job and you are happy about it, if I'm happy with you and I'm recharging myself with that positivity and that good energy, if I have an interview tomorrow, I have two options. One is if I go to the interview with this resentment because Carla got the job and I didn't get it, now I'm going to
Mhm.
go to this interview and I may still carry some of that and it still may come up in my interview and they pick up, well, this person kind of negative. But if I go to this interview with an excitement, they're like, wow, this person should be great to work with because, they're bringing great energy. Part of that positivity and great energy and excitement and joy that I have could be coming from the fact that something good happened to you, even when it didn't happen to me.
I love it. And one of the things that when you were talking about empathy and people saying, well, I've got enough of my own weight, I find that I actually do better when I can focus on someone else's problems and helping them. I kind of
Yes.
forget mine. And no, this is great stuff. A lot of people don't truly know. So if you wouldn't mind kind of, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but layman's terms, if you will, what is emotional intelligence?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Absolutely. So, emotional intelligence is our capacity that we have to understand and manage our own emotions and understand the emotions of others. There are many writers and many authors writing about emotional intelligence, and they define it in different terms and with different elements. But generally speaking, there are five components of emotional intelligence. The first three are about ourselves. So the first one is self-awareness, which is self-understanding. So self-awareness is when we develop the ability to think about who we are. Who am I? What things, what gets me happy, what makes me angry, what bothers me, what annoys me. How do I come across? How do I make others feel, right? And these things. So it's like understanding yourself. That's the first one, self-awareness, self-understanding, right? And there are different authors call it differently, but it's about understanding yourself and understanding your emotions, right? The second one is self-regulation. So self-regulation is your ability to actually control, like the way that you act, how you come across, what you say, what you do. And that is, for example, when people give you feedback. Let's suppose that you come to me, Luis, Carla, and you say, hey, Luis, you know what? I realize that sometimes you're too direct. You come across and, you may say something or, you're interrupting people like all the time and stuff. Now, I have that information. If I have a combination of self-awareness and self-regulation, the self-awareness would allow me to then take your input and say, okay, now if I see myself from the outside in, I realize, yes, I am being too direct and I am interrupting people all the time. And then the self-regulation would allow me to then make those changes, basically control that behavior and make the adjustment and the adaptation so that I can come across differently. And sometimes actually, so some people come to my training and tell me, Luis, sometimes like I'm too impulsive. Like I say, I'm thinking something, I just like throw it out there and I say it, and then like I am, sorry to have said that. And that usually, generally speaking, there can be many reasons why that happens. But generally speaking, when people do that, that they impulsively say something that kind of a thought that came into their mind and they threw it out there, is because they have low self-regulation. Because when you increase your regulation, what you do is you actually develop the ability to create a pause between your thoughts and your actions. So let's suppose that I am, speaking with you, and then
Mhm.
I have thoughts because, thoughts are natural. All kinds of thoughts can come
Right.
through my head, but the self-regulation allows for me to actually disconnect the thought from the action, in this case, my words. And I
Mhm.
can think about, okay, what would it be, appropriate to say or to do or to not. And then, so there's that filter. And then, that's why they say, like, when some people are, inappropriate, when they say things that are like, like Michael in the office, say things that are like super weird and stuff. That's because a person has no filter. Is
Filter.
because, generally speaking, they have low self-regulation. Then the third component is empathy, right? And people think of empathy, well, it's walking in somebody else's shoes, which is good, walking in somebody else's shoes, but it's understanding that when you walk in somebody else's shoes, it's about seeing with somebody else's eyes. It's about feeling with somebody else's heart, and it's about believing what somebody else believes, even when it doesn't match your own reality, right? So in this
Mhm.
case, when someone comes to you and says, so one of the things that we do, one of the mechanics of our brain, one of our brain functions is that we actually have like we have a fact checker in our brain. So when someone tells us something, our brain is consistently checking what you are, so every time you
Mhm.
talk to me, my brain is checking what you are telling me with my own experiences. So like all I have lived. And when what you say matches what has happened to me, then what comes back is true. It must be true because it has happened to me, right? That's why when people say, oh, I saw the movie, the birds on the roof, and it was a great movie. I said, yeah, it was a great movie. I saw it too. And so it means it's good because I saw it too. So then it must be good, right? Because I have this fact checking. But empathy is actually taking someone's reality as reality. One of the examples I always give in my training is someone comes to you and says, oh, I'm cold. And say, no, it's not cold. No, I'm sorry. I didn't say it was cold. I say I am cold because I
Right.
wasn't talking about how it is. I'm talking about how I am. And sometimes people say, you say, oh, I am cold. And then immediately your thermometer starts. And then you say, oh, I am not cold. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you're not cold
Right.
because you not being cold doesn't make me any less cold. I can be cold even when
Mhm.
you're hot, right? Because I am independently hot, and I can be cold. I can be cold because of something that is happening to me internally. It has nothing to do with the climate or the weather or the external temperature. It has to do with something inside of me. So,
Mhm.
sometimes your kid will say, "Oh, I'm so nervous because I have an exam." It's like, "Oh, exams! Like, you're gonna be taking exams all the time." I remember when I was a kid, I took a test, and so you shouldn't worry because I am actually projecting and I'm thinking, so I'm doing the fact checking and I'm
Mhm.
thinking because I wasn't nervous when I had exams, then my child shouldn't be nervous when he or she has an exam, right? But it's about disconnecting that and then saying, oh, you are nervous. Yeah, I totally understand you. You want me to be here, but what can I do? What, you are cold, but you want us to walk inside. Can I lend you my jacket, all right? Because it's not about doing the fact checking. So that's important with empathy. Then the fourth
Mhm.
component, that and then we have social skills.
Mhm.
That would be, kind of like the ability then to connect with others effectively, communicate effectively. So
Interesting.
we have, yeah, so we talked about the first three are self-awareness,
Yep.
self-regulation, right? Oh, sorry, I forgot to talk to you about one, a very important one actually,
Oh,
that
okay.
is self-motivation. So self-motivation is that actually this is fascinating because some people, right, have the ability to find the motivation that they need from within themselves. So, like some studies say that very successful people in the various fields that they have been very successful, they actually didn't need for someone else to come from the outside to tell them, you gotta do this, you gotta work, you gotta, but they themselves, these are the folks that were waking up early, that were training many hours a day, that they were, kind of like, the writers that are consistently writing nonstop. And people
Overachievers. Yeah.
overachieve. Well, so in that case, for example, some overachievers, they actually, no one is forcing them to be overachievers. They
Right.
themselves have the self motivation to be. And actually, so you can connect those five components, right? Because, for example, with self motivation, you can increase your self regulation because to want to adapt your behavior, you have to have the internal motivation to want to do it. Some people tell me, oh, I say it like it is. I'm gonna say it, and I know I'm gonna go talk to Carla, and I know she's not gonna like this, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I say it like it is. In this case, is I already know. So I know you, Carla. I know what you're going to like and not like. I know what you're
Mhm.
going to receive well and what you're not going to receive well. And I
Mhm.
am then saying that even though I have that information that would allow me to adjust my message to be more effective with you, I'm still deciding to not do that. And it could be one, because I have low self-regulation. It's like
Mhm.
I have no filter. I don't want to control and make those changes. I just want to go as is. And second could be because I can have a low self motivation, is that I really
Mhm.
don't have the motivation to do it, right? So then on the conversely, if you have a person that has a high, self-regulation, a high level of self-regulation and a high level of self-motivation, I will have then the motivation personally to do it differently. And then I would have the ability and the skills to regulate myself to then adjust my message to be more effective with you.
Oh, that's outstanding. There's so many components that go into this. And, I think about, obviously I tried to think about what you're saying, even bringing it into my own. And I'm that person who can have self-regulation for a really long time, even 5 years. But if I keep trying to talk to that person, it might not usually professionally, but personally or in the, oops, I just realized I had a little lipstick there. I in my family or whatever, then if they push or someone pushes for a long time, then I can eventually react or whatever. I wouldn't say snap, but where I'll just be like, all right, I've had enough.
Yeah.
Where you try to self-regulate as long as you can. This is really good stuff. And I not only to use personally, but professionally, of course, is what you're speaking about, which is kind of lends me to my next question. You've been, I want to know a little bit about you've been doing quite a bit, the work you've been doing, training the hundreds of leaders around the world, because your resume and your bio and all of the things I've been following you is impressive to say the
Thank
least,
you.
and your experience. So this isn't like two people that are friends that work together and like, let's get together and talk about, this is something you have expertise and you
Yeah.
have credibility. So if you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind sharing.
Absolutely. So one of the things that was exciting is, so I started myself, I've worked in amazing corporations, some of the largest corporations in the world, and I've seen a lot of leadership, and so I've seen great leadership and then leadership that is not so great too. And then I started, just kind of writing and sharing my thoughts out there through LinkedIn and other publications, and then it was fascinating that I started to get people were writing to me about what I wrote, right, about my articles and stuff, and sharing, their thoughts with me. And one of the fascinating things was that some people would contact me and say, "Hey, Luis, I'd like to speak with you. Would you have time to have a call?" And it's like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's have a call." And then when I would speak with them, I realized that they had a very advanced knowledge of emotional intelligence, right? And it's like I was
Mhm.
impressed because of their handling of I had more of an anecdotal, kind of from my own experience. And, I started to read and learn more, but you could tell that they were more kind of like the PhDs, of
Right.
emotional intelligence. And I would then kind of follow, they would find me on LinkedIn and stuff. And then I would go and see their profiles and realize that these were people that were just experts, people that have been
Mm.
doing this for a long time, that they led, important organizations, and that they were teaching for many years these. And to me, it was actually very encouraging and very motivating that people that had those trajectories and were so known in their, and because there were people from
Yeah.
different parts of the world wanted to talk with me, right? And as I tried to learn more, and I was like, why would they want to talk with me? And it had to do a little bit with that I was more kind of this ambassador and activist, that I was going out just with excitement and telling people we gotta learn about this thing, emotional intelligence, because there are some experts that they know a lot, and they have a lot of the academics, they have a lot of a theory, they have a lot of studies, but they may not necessarily kind of have the drive, or
Presentation.
they don't have the energy to do it. So they find in me a vehicle that can help them kind of push out this message that is important to them. So I started to collaborate. So I would say, hey, I
Mhm.
love to engage with you in this conversation. And we started to do actually online, with the pandemic, as more and more people were, having time for themselves and thinking through these things. I started to do online conversations where we would just have an open, unscripted conversation using the elements of emotional intelligence, and allow for people to just kind of, share about their leadership stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then these experts in human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence could provide some of a framework for their stories in the conversation. Well, well, we did one, then two, three, four. Now I've done over 50, and I've learned so much myself. And I think people find those first is valuable because they can learn from these experts, from around the world. The studies that they're doing, the work that they're doing is very fascinating. But it's also, I think, it's like an encouraging message that leadership is changing, has changed, is changing, and will continue to change. And there are multiple driving forces that are changing leadership. But if we think of 2020, the year 2020, two pandemics happened, right? The COVID-19 pandemic, which makes people kind of, life or death, right? It's like, okay, what do I do? How do I take care of myself, my family? How do I protect and what really matters to me? Kind of pandemic number one. But then pandemic number two, with the event around, social and racial disparities, that people really kind of went out on the streets to protest and to demand justice, that, this racial component really came out to the forefront. And then in this case, as people were going to their jobs, there is a fundamental change that has happened. Back in, if you think in the 70s, in the 80s, it was very exciting to work for a big company that had a
Yeah.
big name, right? If you
Yes.
work for this big corporation with a big name, oh, amazing. But and if I so as a family, we would be all excited to have, the dad. In this case, I'm just saying it because,
Yep.
back in, 60s, 70s, the man was like the one that had
Absolutely.
to go out and work and stuff. So then
Yep.
the spouse and the kids, they were all proud of this man that had been working for 30 years at this company, even when the person was coming and was kind of, would come in the evening tired, feeling miserable, really not very excited about what they were doing. They may have been doing the same thing for 10 years, anything, because the excitement was that someone can get to retire in that company and, have a nice
Mhm.
401k. We have, economic safety. Everyone is good. But the person didn't really have a good experience, working in that company. And the fundamental change that is happening now is, so we used to tell kids, like, you gotta go, study medicine, you gotta be a
Yeah.
lawyer, you gotta be an engineer, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. That's what you have to study.
Right.
And now the conversation is changing, where it's like, what would you like to do? And then, I'll tell you what happens if you study this or if you study that, but you have more freedom to kind of go and do what you want to do. In the same thing, kids are now like, dad or mom, you don't look happy, do you really like your job? Tell me about your job. And you don't seem like you like your job. You should look for something else. And like, you'll have a teenager pull up a phone and say, hey, we can go here on whatever, one of these job sites, and let's
Right.
look for a job for you, because here's this thing that you could do. Maybe they forward a job opening to their parents
Mhm.
about something that they think their parents could do, because there is that fundamental change in leadership that is about, doing some, studying something that you really enjoy and have a passion for, and then being in organizations and companies that is not about the big name necessarily like it was in the past, but it's
Right.
about what are those companies. Two things: one, what do those companies and their leadership stand for, right? How do they treat,
Mhm.
what is their connection with people, with the planet, with animals? What processes are they having? How do they manufacture their product? Where and who do they use? How much are they paying their people? What kind of statements are they making out? Or have they said something that was, negative about a certain group or something, right? So then now, when I buy a product, when I wear a T-shirt, when I wear shoes, the brand that my, whatever I wear has, would then now basically be, it's a vehicle for me to express how do I feel about certain things, right? For example, if you buy a Toyota Prius, it's because
Mhm.
you want to tell the world that you care about the planet and that you want to conserve energy. That's
Mhm.
why you're using an electric car. So when
Right.
you work at a certain company, right? So if I work at a company and the leader of those companies make a public statement that is, denigrating, that is kind of a disparaging of a certain group, I could very well be uncomfortable with that. And in some cases, some people will actually start looking for a job somewhere else because they don't
Right.
want to be associated with a company that either have processes that are, negative to a certain group or to animals or to the planet or something like that. right? So there is that change in leadership. I want to be in a place where I am treated right, where I am valued,
Mhm.
where I am welcome, right, regardless of who I am, what the color of my skin is, and my sexual preference. It doesn't matter. I want to feel welcome, treated well, and then I also want to work for an organization that stands for the values that are associated with my own values, right? So here is a playing on emotions. Is in the end, I want to go to that place where, from an emotional standpoint, I feel first safe, so I have that psychological safety that allows me to know, I am in a good place, and I should be okay. But then also that I feel really excited and passionate. I should feel passionate about the work that I do, because the work that is done with love and passion is the
Right.
best work that we can do.
No, this is really, really great things. And a lot of this is just resonating with when you talk about, the 70s. My dad was like that person who was a very early employee at Medtronic. And so then it was instilled in me. Like, can you imagine a female telling the world my family, I wanted to be an entrepreneur? I mean, no, you start as a receptionist at a big company and you work your way up. Well, as we know, the world has changed and that's not even always possible. But what motivates you to do your work? You're obviously very passionate.
Yeah, when working in some great companies, sometimes I'll get, like maybe something in writing, like an email that says, Luis, you're a great person. Luis, you spend time talking to other people. Luis, you have great empathy. So I was thinking, wow, I'm amazing. I'm gonna get
You are.
promoted. I'm gonna get a bonus here. This is a fantastic, right? And then, I'll see you at 3. And then when we met in person, we'd be like, Luis, you are a good person. You have a lot of empathy. You're spending time working with people. So in reality, they were not giving me a compliment. What they were telling me is that they were concerned because, I was a good person. I had a high level of empathy, and I was spending time with other people, because in some vision of leadership, right? Leadership is like if you have too much empathy, then that's seen more as a weakness. So then you're soft as a leader, and that would actually be an impediment for you to make difficult decisions. But so that was a motivation for me, because I realized that there were a lot of other people worldwide, and actually women, a lot of women, that would tell me, for example, now when I tell people, hey, we have a training coming up on empathy, I have a lot of women that tell me, no, what, are you crazy? Like, I don't want to increase my level of empathy. I want to actually decrease my level of empathy. I do you have a training that would help me to hide my empathy? Because I don't want people at work to know that I have empathy. And that is because if you, as a woman, if you're rising up as a leader, and people start telling you that you have more empathy, what they could be telling you in code is, I think that you would not have, like, the tenacity, the strength to, if we need to right size the group, you won't be able to do it because you have empathy. And what we need to actually, so what I wanted to help the world understand is that people that have high levels of empathy, is not that they cannot make tough decisions. They can. The thing is how they go about it. They will still make the decision, but they make them differently, because you make them with compassion. So, all companies need to, yeah, you do it by caring. So you sometimes you'll have somebody in your team that is not the right person for that job. It's a wrong assignment, or something is going on where they can really perform, they cannot perform the job. It's totally okay to reassign the person and find something that would be, a better fit for that person. But it's how you go about it, right? It's like,
Right.
are you helping? And there are instances where someone can have a long-term relationship with someone that was actually a previous boss that, terminated the relationship. But if you do it where you're actually telling the person, you're helping the person to see something that they're not seeing for themselves, learn more about a talent and a potential that they have, connect them with those resources, help them to navigate through that, and help them land somewhere else, offer, a recommendation or something, so that you really help that person, so that person could end up being very successful by doing something else, and they could end up being very grateful to you, and you were the one actually telling them that the first job that they were doing was not the right one. But you have instances where you really have folks that feel, it's like, okay, you have a mission, you need to, terminate this person, and it almost feels like they enjoy because the way that they go about it, right, is more kind of a
They
with
even laugh.
malice.
I've watched them get like a laugh. Like they really enjoy hurting people sometimes. The
Exactly,
narcissists really do.
and
Yeah.
it's a reality. I mean, we want to think that most people in the
Right.
world are good people, so For the most part, people are good, but there
Yes.
are people who fortunately do, enjoy, and you see it. And the reason why I say it is, we see it in our training when people tell their stories, is the way that they go about it, the things that they would do. So there was a case recently where, someone was, they made a person go through all the process, interviewing and all that, and giving the person hope that the job could be theirs when they had already extended the offer to somebody else. So, like, you're having someone
I had
go,
that
and
happen to me.
there you go. Why,
Yeah.
why would somebody do that? I mean,
Yep.
when
They,
it's
they
more about,
courted me for over a year, big name company in town, and I was a little shy, hesitant to go back into the corporate world. And here, come to find out, they'd offered to someone else. But you know what? Everything comes full circle. That person never passed the background check.
there you go.
And then there was a
Exactly.
hiring freeze and a traveling freeze, and then the pandemic and everything else hit. And this was about 18 months ago. This happened to me, and I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know. So
Or,
everything happens for a reason, but
or you have people who report that they're giving a mission to, so it's like you have, for example, you have a team that reports to you, and you have people that, you're working with them closely and know them and all that, and kind of feel good with them, have a good relationship. But there are instances where from the above, you basically receive a mission. So, Carla, we need to, take this one down. And it's like, it's one of those things where, wow, but let me, if you're in the middle, it's like, okay, try, don't do it, don't execute your mission. Let's see what happens.
I
And
just
move
recently went
into,
through that where I was asked to
yeah,
terminate somebody, and I was like, well, who's
right,
going to do their job? And that person hadn't thought that through. And I said, you realize that's my right hand person.
right,
And that person is pretty talented. And if just given
right.
the right tools, and I was right. I then, because I begged, was allowed to work with that person is flourishing. And my heart, it's like, see, you just know that when someone's intelligent and they have the potential, but they need that empathy, they need that emotional intelligence, that support. And I keep looking over to this way because we've got a lot of people online. I'm having people say, hello, hi, Carla Jean. And somebody just said, my husband has a skill with terminating employees where they actually thank him. They remain dear friends. Years later, they run into him and they still thank him for his compassion.
Oh, absolutely. So it's Colleen. Yeah, Colleen. So, kudos. So congratulations to being married to a person that has that good heart,
Yes.
because, terminating someone is not necessarily, doesn't have to be a bad thing for the person. If he is just rerouting the person to something that is better for them, but it's about, like the way your husband is doing it, right? Where people really feel, grateful for that. And that's what we need to learn more about. And it's even feedback, like I have had, with I work for a lot of amazing people that they can tell you something, so let's say that there's something that you should be doing that you're not doing it. And the way that you receive the feedback, it can either motivate you to do it, or it can,
Demotivate you.
basically demotivate you, right? And there are people who really, hey, if I'm your boss, if I'm your manager, your coach, your leader, it is actually my responsibility to continuously be looking for things that would make you a better person, right? So when I come to you and say, hey, Carla, I saw this, and something that you could be doing differently, basically what I'm telling you is there is an opportunity for you to continue to grow and get better and improve. And so there really shouldn't be a reason to communicate that negatively, because I'm giving you a gift. It's the gift of feedback. So I've had bosses that they're telling me that's something that I should be doing. I'm not doing it, and they're saying it to me in such a positive way, and it's so inspiring and motivating that you want to do it. And
You
then
want to
you
please
have,
them. You want to make
yeah,
sure that because you love what you're doing. And how can we connect better with other people?
exactly. And it's about showing that you care. So there is a model. There's a model called CARE, and it was invented by Shep Hyken, but it's used in different modifications of it. But it's basically, if you think of the four letters of CARE, CARE, they say, first, to connect, right? To connect is just to connect with the person, human to human, H to A.
Right.
I feel you. I know what you're going through. Then the A is to acknowledge. But when we
Right.
were saying, okay, I am cold. Well, why are you? can I do something for you? And so it's understanding that someone is experiencing something and is to acknowledge it. I understand what is happening to you. I understand its importance. I believe it. And then RE, and people use it with different terms, but it's basically about responding energetically, responding enthusiastically. So in this case is, so the example of I'm called. So connect is, oh, you are called, Carla, wow, that's not good. Let's pay attention to that. And then acknowledge is, yeah, I see you. I can see that, you're called. And then respond enthusiastically is, let's go inside because I think it's not good. It's too cold outside and stuff. So caring is then about that connecting and acknowledging, right? Sometimes, like, when we talk about racial disparities, so let's suppose
Yes.
that we were going to meet in person and I arrived late and I say, hey, Carla, sorry, but I was on my way here and I was pulled over. Oh, okay, Luis, so it must have been I'm sure that it was nothing. And I say, no, 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 actually, I had a kind of like a negative experience because, the officer maybe was not as nice to me. It's like, oh no, Luis, how can that be the case? I've lived in Minnesota for like 20 years and I've never had that happen to me. So in this case, you must have had like a broken life. You must have been speeding. You must have been. So in this case, is you are not willing to accept my reality. So I am telling you that I had a bad experience. So what you have to do is, again, compartmentalize and just take your lived experiences aside for a moment and, understanding you are a white woman, I am a Latino man, so
Right.
we are going to have different experiences, and then you have to take
Absolutely.
what I say to you as a reality. Of course, if I tell you multiple things and then you kind of check and see that they are not true, eventually you'll say, well, Luis is consistently telling me things that are not true, then I shouldn't believe him. But and some people say, there are people that say, oh, you have to work hard to earn my trust. So I never trust people up front. They really need to work really, really hard. And with years, after years and years, then I can see if I can trust them. That is one
Right.
way to live. And I know, there are people that live in that way, but there's
I do
also
too.
another option, which is you actually start trusting, right? You start, you trust up front. You take people's realities when they come to you and they share something with you. You take it as reality. It could be your own kid telling you that, hey, I don't like that teacher, or I don't like that babysitter. I don't like that, I don't like my uncle, so
Hmm.
and so. We gotta be paying attention to these things because the fact, and there are, so for example, I have had this case where somebody in the class says, well, I think my boss is a terrible person, the person that doesn't really care. But other people, when I go talk to other people, they find that my boss to be this amazing person. Yes, because if someone comes to, if I come to you, or Carla, if you come to me and you say,
Hmm.
hey, I'm having problems with my boss, it's not going
Hmm.
really well, it doesn't really matter what my relationship is with your boss, because what I have to pay attention to is what the relationship is with you, because you are the one having it, because they're going to have a different relationship with me than they have with you. But if
Right.
that person is really nice to me, it's irrelevant. It doesn't really matter because they're not being the right boss to you. And
Right.
it's really understanding and accepting other people's reality, and that is one way to better connect with other people from a human to human standpoint.
That is excellent and such a good point. What changes are you seeing in the workplace?
Yes, so when in 2020, for example, when we had the two pandemics that I described earlier,
Right.
people were observing how their leaders and their organizations were reacting and behaving and what they were doing, right? So you have, as a leader, for example, you can be worried about the projects, deadlines, when are we going to get these financial results and stuff. And so you call me and you need something from me, and you call me and say, Luis, when we're going to have this project, and can we meet today? And I said, like, Louis, Carla, I'm sorry, but I'm really kind of going through a tough situation. This whole thing is affecting me. I didn't sleep last night. I'm not feeling well. My throat is not. And then so after I say all those things to you, you answer, "That's all right. You just like tell me when you can meet, and so if we can meet this Friday and stuff, because then you are in project mode. You're basically on a mission to accomplish that objective that you need, and that focus on accomplishing that objective is actually blinding you, and actually you, so you can't even hear what I'm telling you, because I'm saying, I couldn't sleep. I'm saying, maybe I tell you that my son is sick, or maybe, what you told me earlier about your mom. And so I can't hear that. I can't, it blinds me to all that because I am extremely focused on this. So one of the changes that we're seeing is that as employees were going through this vulnerable moment in 2020, and they were thinking about themselves and what mattered to them, they were paying attention to who are the people that I'm working with, right? Do they care? What do they care about? How, and actually in the past, one of the changes that is happening is that one of the ways to lead in the past was to remain neutral on social things. So anything that had to do with social justice, the way to win was step back, let for the all, kind of the turbulence and stuff to happen, and then you come out, right? And then you reemerge, and then everything is good. So basically, every time people talk about politics or religion or anything like that, you keep your mouth shut and you don't get engaged in any of that, and then you'll be a great leader. That worked for many, many years. But
It doesn't
today,
anymore. No.
it doesn't work anymore. Now, the new generation of employees coming to the workplace, especially they being more people of color, it is important to them to know, okay, wait, and by the way, when you don't say something, you're not staying neutral, because not saying something is saying something. When something really important, from a social justice standpoint is happening out there. If I'm a person of color, if I'm a black, I'm Latino, if I'm Latino and something is happening in the, it's important in the Latino community, then I need to hear what you have to say about that. And if you don't say something and it's something that requires something to be said, then you are saying something with your silence. So now it
Right.
matters to me, and I'm going to decide whether it is okay and safe to me to stay working in that place if I can, so that is one of the changes we're seeing. And actually now it was interesting because in the past, you could have your marketing department and your PR department kind of do
I
the
swear
whole
I only had water
talking.
for dinner. Sorry about that. My
No,
arm
no,
slipped off my chair.
no
So
problem.
sorry.
So you'll
Not very
have like your
yeah.
you'll have like your marketing or your PR department speaking, on your behalf and stuff, and then that can be put out there. Everything was good, but now with a lot of the new technology, with websites out there that are a lot. First is there's an increased interest in people in feeling more comfortable with sharing, so the younger folks share more easily, right? So they want to share about their experiences, and they're using these online websites portal where they can talk about what's happening with them, and they share names and names of companies and all that. So you can now have your marketing department telling one story and everything, but if it's not consistent with what people are reading, from the first hand from what employees are saying, then now you have a problem. So those are the important changes that we're seeing, right? Employees want to work in places where they can connect, with the values. They want to hear their leaders now. So when something is happening, I want my leader to speak first, timely. I don't want you to speak after everybody else has spoken like 3 months later. No, I want you to speak now when the situation is happening. Second is I want you to speak clearly. I don't want you to say blah, 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 and then in the end, I don't even know what you're saying. I want you to say exactly, it has to be clear to understand, what you're saying. And then it needs to connect. What you're saying has to be consistent with, what we are seeing in there, right? So I'll give you an example. So you have at a company, a large company, you gather, employees, and you bring them to a conference room. You have over 100 people. And at the beginning of it, so this is going to be a meeting for, 90 minutes or 1 hour. It's going to be a meeting for 1 hour. And at the beginning of the meeting, so I'll say, okay, we want to welcome, so and so is the CEO is going to come and address the room. And, so the person comes in and says, yes, because, employees are really important. You're the most important thing for me. So I'm going to invest time and my commitment to you and this and that, right, for 10 minutes. And then the person says, well, we would like to thank, our CEO, Mr. So and so. And yeah, thank you. And you just kind of, the person goes. So the person just said that the employees were very important, that it was a commitment, that they were going to put in the time and all that. But after those 10 minutes at the beginning, the person runs to do something else. So the rest of the conversation, so you speak unidirectionally. You
Okay.
say a statement, you say something, you put it out there, and maybe you say, well, take one question, two questions, okay, we can take one more question because, unfortunately, the CEO needs to go. So then it's like, okay, do you have time? You have the time or you don't have the time? Are you going to engage or you're not going to engage? Because if you're saying something to the audience and the audience wants to engage and wants to talk with you, you need to make the time not only to speak to them, but also to listen to them, right? So then, in all reality, I know many people will challenge me on this and will say that this doesn't make sense. But what I propose is that if you're going to go to your employees to say that they are important, that you're making the commitment, that they are deserving of your time, they're worth your time, then that you show it with your action by actually staying the whole hour there so that you can listen to what they have to say to you and engage and not only talk to them, but also listening to them to admit mistakes. To if an employee says, hey, here's what we're seeing and stuff, that people can say, you are right, I am seeing that, and here are the changes. That right, that's the new conversation. So long answer to your question, but you asked me what are the changes that we're
No,
seeing. That is one of the changes we're seeing.
no, that's great. And actions do speak louder than words. I
Yeah,
actually have two more questions for you, if you don't mind. And we'd still have
absolutely.
some people online watching, and I know a lot of people are interested in, and I could talk to you about this for several hours. But my next question is, you've published a lot of material out there and articles, and you've spoken. What feedback are you getting? You have to be
That's
receiving.
a great question. You know that when I started writing about emotional intelligence and human-centered leadership about, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, I had some people that told me, "Oh yeah, that's easy to say when you're in a classroom. That's easy. That's great that you tell that to your students in your classroom, but wait until you have to work for a company." It's like I'm not a professor or anything. I'm an employee at a company, because when they read what I was writing, they thought that was theory, and some people said, "Oh, that's too idealistic. That's too
Interesting.
academic, that will never work in real life." So that was part of the feedback that I was getting. And then, I think it was evolving more that, so I used to make calls and contact people and write to people and say, hey, I'm thinking about this human-centered leadership. I'd love to talk to you. And they're like, I not sure about that. Thank you, but no, thank you. And what I'm
Mhm.
getting more now, after 2020, is actually people more reaching out and say, hey, Luis, tell me more about that thing that you were talking to me about, human-centered leadership, emotional intelligence, empathy, because they're hearing it more. And in fact, I get all the time when people email me or send me texts and stuff and say, oh, I was just at this meeting, they were talking about empathy. I was reading the news and I was heard about empathy. I was watching the news and they were talking about empathy, because now it's one of those things like, when you're on the streets and you never saw a certain car, then you buy the car and then you see that car everywhere. Now
Right.
people are hearing this empathy more and more, and emotional intelligence, and now they have an interest and they want to learn more about it. But I'm excited. For me, it's great because now people are then developing that interest in something that I have for many years had a passion for.
Well, a business mentor recently said something to me, because we were talking about actually emotionally and intelligence, empathy, caring, and and they said, Carla, they've known me a long time, and they said you can work with just about anybody, but you shouldn't work with just about anybody. You are learning the skills of emotional intelligence and human-centered leadership. Put that into place and choose who you want to work with or for, because not every, like you were talking about, those that are incapable of empathy and caring because
Yeah.
of other, like, narcissism or other mental health issues, or and very serious medical issues. But it's important to protect yourself too, because I always thought, oh, I can do it, I can work with anybody. And through my history, I have 99.999% of the time, all my clients are wonderful. So that's not what I'm talking about. It's more of like working for somebody. And I've had two instances where I was like, I learned a lot, but and it really helped me through that process. So that's all. It puts it in perspective. And I think you have to grow in order to take what you are sharing with us and apply it. You almost have to go through those experiences. But
Yeah. And
yeah.
you actually, on that point, thank you for bringing up that point, Carla. You have actually brought up a very, very important point, is that to understand that our brains, right, are moldable, like they're plastic, they're learning and they're adjusting, and we are sponges. So we really are affected by our environments. So for many reasons, and part of it is also we want to adapt to survive, right? So what ends up happening is we're consistently learning what we see around us. That's why we tell parents that whatever their kids see in them, they'll repeat. And that there is research that will say that people that are abusive to their partners is because they likely saw that in a parent or in a relative, right? Because you're seeing and acting, you're really modeling after what you see. So then there are people who tell me, hey, I'm working at this company, the leadership is terrible, I don't that they are jerks and stuff, but I'm making good money, I'm good, and so I can be there. And what I one of the things that we really need to pay attention to, just like you wouldn't want somebody that you love working in, or being partnered or living
Right,
with someone that is abusive to them, right? Because that abuse, two
right.
things can happen actually. One is that the abuse, obviously affects the person negatively and all that, but it can actually, the person can then pick up some of those behaviors, which is a bad thing. So, in the same thing happens with leadership. The reality is that, inevitably, you are going to be adopting leadership behaviors from the leaders that you work with. So, in time, right? So, if for years you work for a bad leader, before you know it, some of the bad leadership things that they are doing, you will start doing them.
Oh,
And if you work for great leaders, then so if you work hard to try to emulate, you will. But even if you don't, just by observing and observing, you will start to model, your own behavior from that behavior that you're seeing. And so that's why I always tell people, you know, work for leaders that you admire, work in companies, where you really like the environment, because you will become part of it. So if you work in a toxic environment, eventually, without noticing, you will be toxic too.
you'll be part of
So
the problem.
it's always finding that place. It's like, you want in your home a place that is, safe, and that is, where you have
Mhm.
harmony, and you have peace and calm. You also want to find that place where you can work, where you can have the spirit and the feeling and the ambience, the environment where you're working is one that is positive for you, because those things that are around you will affect how it will affect yourself.
Oh, such great information. My very last question, but I do feel it's so important during going through this pandemic, is what do you see as the leadership of the future?
Great question. Thank you for asking. So, I think the first is, for me, the number one mission of a leader is to inspire. Is to inspire, to motivate, and to really provide a safe, environment where people can really learn, and you provide that safety in many ways. But part of it also is to provide an environment that is welcoming, that is motivated, where people feel seen, where people feel value, and they feel, cared for, appreciated. And that is really the leadership of the future. Because, in the past, we were thinking about technical knowledge, and the leader had to be the one that knew the most. And you saw it, when people were very good at what they did. So if you had a single contributor and they were really, really strong at what they were doing, they would get promoted. They had people reporting to them, and then sometimes it wouldn't work. Why? Because, the motivation to promote that person had to do with their technical knowledge, but they really had no interest in people. They were not caring, about others. They were not even appreciative of somebody else's way to do something, but they wanted others to do it in the way they did it, right? So they were, micromanaging, always,
Mhm.
controlling what other people were doing. And those are not great leaders. But great leaders are the people that are really, that have the trust in their people that feel comfortable knowing that people reporting to them could actually be smarter than them, and that
Yes.
they can, appreciate them and value them, and provide the opportunities and the platform for those people to succeed. And actually, I'll close with this
Yes.
thought.
Thank
In
you.
the past, it was very common. People would get in front of an audience and say, I don't care about being liked, because for me, it's about being respected. I don't need to be liked, because if to be like, I'm not going to let people do whatever they want so that they can like me. So I don't care that they don't like me. I just want them to respect me. Actually, now there is research that is suggesting that actually liking is a component of respecting, where some people can actually not respect you if they don't like you,
Mm.
because liking is not necessarily that I'm going to like you because you let me do whatever I do,
Right.
whatever I want. But it's actually, the people would say, okay, if I have a leader that provides me with the vision of what we have to do, provide me with the safety, the comfort, the safety workplace, and that gives me the tools and the resources and the training and the guidance, right? And give me the motivation and the encouragement for me to do my work, I'm actually going to like the leader, because I'm not liking a person that just lets me do whatever I want to do. I'm liking the persons that increases the chances that I succeed. So you give me the guidance, you give me the resources, and then you increase my chances that I succeed. I'm going to like you, and because I like you, I'm going to respect you, right?
You're going to
So
work
that's the
harder for that
yeah, I'm
part.
gonna work harder. So that's the leadership of the futurist leaders that we respect and like.
Love
And
it.
not liking is not, oh, I want to be popular by just not enforcing the rules. Liking is providing people the motivation, the inspiration, the guidance, and the vision for them to be successful. And thank you, Carla, for inviting me to your show, to your program.
Oh,
It's a pleasure to get to work with you, and I hope that folks tonight that have joined us or that are seeing this on demand, they can find a perspective or a thought that was, exciting, inspiring, and happy to connect with anyone who would like to talk more about this.
well, that's what my next question, my very, very last was, you are very inspiring, and I'm sure there are going to be people who want to reach out to you. I will, after I put this together, after we close, I will also post it, but would you mind verbally sharing how people can reach out to you and contact you?
Sure, absolutely. So on LinkedIn, Luis Moreno, you can find me, Luis Moreno. I live in Minnesota. You can find me here. And then, so there, am the co-founder of an organization that is called the Twin Cities Business Peer Network, and the initials are TC from Twin Cities, BPN from Business Peer Network. So my handle in a lot of social media, platform is Luis Moreno TCBPN. So on YouTube, Luis Moreno space TCBPN, but Luis Moreno TCBPN all together in one word on Instagram, Twitter, Telegram, Clubhouse, everywhere.
Fantastic. We're getting wonderful comments and great interview. This eventually will be on 21 different platforms. Thank you, though, to those who did tune in live on Facebook tonight to watch this. I am so honored to have with me Luis Moreno, who is an activist for human-centered leadership and emotional intelligence. Keep doing what you're doing. You're
Thank you,
inspiring
Carla.
all of us. And for all of you, please continue to tune in 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Tuesday evenings. With my mom being at end of life, please forgive me if we do miss a week or so, but we will be back. I will keep posting shows, pre-recorded shows if I can. And Luis, let's keep working together. Let's keep doing.
Absolutely. And you and your mom are in my thoughts. So
Things.
sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. It's a part of life, but we're never ready for it. But thank you for your empathy. Thank you for your kindness and your patience. And everybody, thank you again for tuning in. We're just honored to be the Twin Cities' longest airing community showcase. We love featuring the best kept secrets, businesses, organizations, and people like Luis. And I look forward to seeing you both either next Tuesday or the following at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Carla. Bye, everyone.